This hearing on Americans detained in Iran will come to order. I'm going to ask all of the members to take their seat at this time. All four of our witnesses are close relatives of these Americans who've been away from their families now for far too long. Ali Rayburn is the brother of Washington Post correspondent Jason Rayburn, whose so-called trial began last week. That is a trial that began in secret. Nagma Abedini is the wife of Pastor Saeed Abedini. Sarah Hekmati is the sister of former U.S. Marine Amir Hekmati, and Daniel Livingston is the son of Robert Livingston. We deeply appreciate, I will say to all of the family members here, you being with us today to give this testimony today. The committee stands in solidarity with each of your families. We can't imagine what you're being put through. We share your anger, we share your frustration with the position that you've been put in. Immediately after our hearing today, the committee will be passing a resolution that calls for Iran to release all detained U.S. citizens immediately and provide information it possesses regarding any who have disappeared within its borders. And I'd like to recognize the work of Congressman Huffman of California, Congressman Labrador of Idaho, and Congressman Kildee of Michigan, and of course Mr. Deutsch is a senior member of this committee. And I know that these members have worked to represent the best interests of your families, and I thank each of them for joining us here on the committee today. This morning we will be hearing the stories of these four Americans. Jason Rayburn is a journalist who was born and raised in California. He hoped to use his position at the Washington Post to present a greater understanding of the Iranian people. Arrested on trumped-up charges, he's been interrogated. He's been held for over 300 days at the infamous Evin prison. Like every other aspect of his case, his trial opened last week, shrouded in secrecy. In September 2012, Iran arrested and later sentenced Pastor Saeed Abedini to 8 years for gathering with others to study the Bible. As his wife notes, this is a lawful act, even under Iranian law, but one which the regime deemed a threat to national security. His jailers have asked him to renounce his faith, and I think he's been jailed for 8 years with threat of more if he does not renounce his faith. In August 2011, Amir Hekmati, a former U.S. Marine, was sentenced to death for alleged espionage. Upon his appeal, the sentence was reduced to 10 years. His sister will tell us how Amir has been treated on his feet with cables and tasered repeatedly in the kidneys. His father is gravely ill, and he had gone to Iran to visit family. In 2007, Robert Livingston went missing on Iran's Kish Island. 8 years later, Iran continues to refuse to assist the United States in locating him. As Daniel notes, his father is the longest-held hostage in American history. Each of these tragic cases is unique, but they each demonstrate Iran's view of the United States, which is one of contempt. Washington Post editor Martin Barron wrote last week, "There is no justice in this system, not an ounce of it. Iran is making a statement about its values in the disgraceful treatment of our colleague." This is, by the way, I would point out, a country that regularly holds these Death to America rallies. And so the contempt with which they hold American hostages is not something new with respect to dealing with the Iranian regime. And frankly, with the Houthis now holding 4 Americans and refusing to release them because they're Americans, we have an extension of this policy into Yemen. And while our focus this morning is the release of these Americans, these cases do call into question the integrity of the diplomacy surrounding Iran's nuclear program. As editorial boards point out, is this another attempt to pressure the administration into weakening its position at the talks? If a journalist can be suddenly imprisoned on bogus charges, what treatment can international inspectors for Iran's nuclear program expect? And I would add to this a more fundamental point. If top Iranian officials cannot be counted on to assist these wrongfully jailed Americans, can they be counted on to honor the commitments they make at the negotiating table? Call me a skeptic, but we are very concerned about the fact that these 4 Americans have been held for so long, and especially this show trial, which just began last week. So the bottom line this morning is that these 4 Americans should be allowed to come home now. And I will recognize the ranking member for today's hearing, Mr. Ted Deutsch of Florida, for any opening comments he may have.